Howdy everyone, your boy is back. I know you've all been waiting for what young Seward has to think about 3.0. You've sort of probably got your own thoughts, but you've probably been waiting because we got to wait to see what he thinks because I know that I'm the driver of community sentiment. You don't have to tell me, I know. Full disclosure, I did record about 4 minutes of this video, then realized that my mic wasn't plugged in. So I might forget some things thinking that I've already said it. And I don't really want to repeat that whole 4 minutes, so I'm going to summarize the 4 minutes that you didn't hear. Basically, I haven't even played a game of 3.0 yet, so that's a big disclaimer over this whole video. We had a 2.0 tournament up until recently, like it was 8 days ago. So my focus was still, I wasn't really thinking that much about the game in general, but mainly thinking more about 2.0 than about 3.0 anyway. But I have been paying attention to the rules. I've read a bit of the rule book. I've had conversations with people, and I've seen a lot of the designer back and forth. The designer back and forth I think is really good because they're giving lots of insight into their own decision making in terms of this is why we have put this mechanic in, and this is the mechanic that we've implemented, which is good to know because sometimes you disagree with a mechanic but agree with the goal that it was put in for, and sometimes you disagree with the goal. So it's good when you get the explanation of why something happened, because that means that you can give your feedback properly where you go, well, actually, you nerf single model movements in some cases. Sorry, slight pause there so I could sneeze. No, like so you've nerfed some single models movements. I like that, but I don't like how you've done it. I don't think you've done enough. Or you might go, no, I want single models to be as free as they are now. It's different kind of feedback you'd give, so it's good to know the reasonings behind things. I don't really want to go through the rulebook bit by bit, or go through every single change. I'm not that interested in that. So I've sort of just got more of an overview of my thoughts. I've got things that I think it's done well, things that I think it's done poorly, and then sort of my more personal reactions to them, because some of those are sort of different. Like there are things that I think that the game has done well, or that are good design decisions, that I personally dislike. The things that I think it's done poorly is a little bit more my personal preference. But there are some things that I think it's done well that I don't like, whereas the bad things I think are easier to disagree with if you just disagree with my feelings on a particular thing. But to start off, one of the things I really don't like about it is the homogenization of sort of army lists and army books to a degree that I don't like. So when I talk about that, I mean the points caps on things. Units can't be more than 600. Characters have limits that sometimes are a little bit higher, like Greater Demons are 900. I know that these limits actually existed sort of behind the scenes, and they've made them now just overt. But one, I think they've restricted them more than they were before, because obviously 600 is a pretty low cap for units. But it's done a lot of things like you can't take. I've got 10 Wrath chosen with great weapons as my models, and you can take them, but not if they have a standard bearer musician. Or you could take them with a standard bearer musician, but not if they had great weapons, if they had paired weapons instead. And it's sort of like, just let me take my 10 models. Like 10's a nice divisible by 5 number. I don't like the nitty gritty focus of that. And I don't like how it is really it's taking the top level things down, and it's taking the things on the bottom up, because they're like, oh, we shouldn't have chaff or dedicated chaff anymore, so that stuff needs to be more expensive, and it's just squeezing more things into the middle and giving you less choices in army list building. And one of those reasons is they want to focus on MMU. That's no, the game should be medium-sized blocks against medium-sized blocks mostly. And there is a point there where there's a problem incentivizing medium-sized units with the points values that they have, because it's sort of like, well, we can make starting cost cheaper, or we can make the additional models cheaper, or vice versa. But we don't have anything to say, 20 of this unit can be, between 10 and 30. It's hard to make it so that 20 is the optimum, and neither 10 or 30 is the optimum, because usually if 20 is the optimum, it's because the extra models are cheaper, so you want to just keep adding more models. So I get that from that extent, but I think you could do that in a lot of better ways. Even personally, I'd prefer if you went, okay, here's your unit of Wildhorns. You can have them, they start at size 15, or you can have a size 25, or you can have a size 40. That's it. These are the point costs for each one. I would prefer that to these weird artificial limits they put in a whole bunch of places. I don't want to run a 9-man chosen unit. I want to run a 5-man chosen unit, a 6-man chosen unit, or a 10-man chosen unit. Because, visually in their little squares, they look better. I guess 8 would be okay too, but 8 just seems wrong to me. It seems like a bad number. Similar thing with, simplifying stat lines. So you can only have 3 types of dwarves or something. It's there's the strength 4 medium elite dwarf, which is weapon skill 4, strength 4, AP 1. There's the worst kind of dwarf, which is the same thing, but strength 3, AP 0. Then there's the elite dwarf, who is weapon skill 5, and maybe has a special rule. And, dwarves have, 7 infantry units. Having a little bit more stat line spread makes the book more interesting. And I know that, some people... So, sort of the complaint I feel like that is solving is that people don't remember the stats of their units as easily. So they go, oh no, actually my Greybeard's weapon skill 5, I would have hit you on 3s rather than 4s. Most of those cases, though, I don't actually think matter. So if you're fixating over going oh, I forgot I'm actually weapon skill 5, would have hit you on 3s, it's well, you also rolled 15 dice. The variance there, the +1 to hit in one instance, doesn't really matter. Or it might have swung around in the to wound rolls where you rolled slightly worse to wound. If you're dealing with a +1 to hit kind of swing in whether something is crucial to your game, it means it's almost like a coin flip. If you forget that, it doesn't matter. And makes things less unique and less interesting by doing that. So I really don't like that, and I really don't like the fact that all this pushing towards of you can't have your Wizard Master Vampire Lord on Dragon anymore because then he can't get any gear, or you can't just have that Uber Lord guy, which I think you should just have. It's just more interesting if you can be you know what, I can do that, or I can go completely MSU, I had way more options in 2.0, and that's probably a bit of an exaggeration in terms of way more, but as an approach to the game, and Ninth Age has been doing it throughout its entire course. It's every update creates more restrictions and more nerfs than it does buffs. They just push the box of things that you're allowed to build into a smaller box. And I don't like that. I also don't like the charge rules. 1d6 as opposed to 2d6. 1d6 doesn't feel right. Just it feels like it's too gimmicky. It's like the GW type rules of on a 6+, this model dies, but on a 1 to 5, it does nothing. I know it's not that, and mathematically it's entirely reasonable, but rolling the single d6 just feels a little bit like roll 6+ to win type rules. Same for command tests. It just, rolling 1 die doesn't work for me. I don't like it. Particularly on beast herds, which is a specific little issue. Their primal tests being almost feels like roll a 3-up roll to see if you win combat, which just seems stupid to me. That there's so much variance on it. I think the best you can get is an 89% chance on that. And no one's happy when that doesn't do what it should do. The beast herds player is not happy. The opponent isn't really happy, sitting there going oh, well, beast herds have got the best offensive output in the game now. I don't know if that's true, but just as an idea, they've got such good offensive output because 1 in 10 games, or 1 in 10 combats, they just lose. So they're combat potential is like artificially decreased by the fact that they just sometimes don't show up. I don't like the 1D. I don't like the 1d6 mechanics. The charge rules specifically I don't like because the way that it sort of works, it seems to me that it's just going to create really static games where you sit outside of max charge distance. You can't declare one of these charges because you move your full advance forward, at which point you're basically going to be auto-charged back. So if you're faster than your opponent, you're fine. If you're better than your opponent, you play better than them, you're going to win the movement phase anyway, so you'll be fine. But if you're playing against a roughly equal opponent, it feels like you're just sort of going to stand there staring at each other, not being able to move into the void between, and nothing's going to happen. Which to me indicates that the game is going to very much become defensive shooting, positional play, and not dynamic combat. Which to me it's just wrong. So I don't think that's the intention of what they're doing with the charge rules, and I could be absolutely wrong with the effect that it's going to have. But to me, that obviously looks to me like the conclusion from the implemented charge rules, and I think that's a way, way worse scenario than the 2.0 rules. And a final thing that I don't like, it's a little bit more nebulous, is there's attempts to sort of solve immersion issues that people have. So one of them is people didn't like, that unit's right there and I can't charge them because I'm in their flank and there's a building in my way. I can't get into their flank. I can get into their front. It's dumb that I can't charge them. And they've tried to solve that, and they've got these weird charge rules now where they've basically solved almost all those unchargeable unit issues. But there's a difference in my mind between narrative immersion and in-game immersion. So narrative immersion, you're looking at those situations and you're going, well, this is stupid that I can't charge them. My unit's here, their unit's there. I should just be able to run around the building and charge him. Which is fair enough. But the solution they've come up to, in large part, leans upon the fact that you don't always have to align anymore. So sometimes you can just sort of be like, I can only get here, and we're just going to fight over this little wedge, this gap between them. We're just going to fight over that because I can't align to you, you can't align to me. I don't know if there's any aligning. I don't think the enemy ever moves anymore. But so I can't align to you, but we're just going to fight over this gap. And to me, that's way, way worse. That's breaking all of my expectations of how the game works, how movement works, how combat works, and looks so wrong to me. And I get that that's an entirely different kind of immersion, because I'm going, no, the rules of the game aren't being followed right here. I know that obviously they are, but it's just sort of like, this should not be how these rules work, because all the other things in this game are about, like when you're in combat, you're aligned. We're playing rank and flank, and we're all squares, and if we don't need to align like that, why don't we just have circular bases? Like, what's at this point, why do we need anyway? It doesn't work for me having things like that, and it's much, much worse than going like, oh yeah, well, I can't charge here, and it's a bit dumb, but it's a game, and there are plenty of dumb things because we're playing a game. And a similar thing, I don't actually know if there's any change to this, but like I've heard people who talk about how dumb it is that you can have like one stubborn model, like you killed one too few, and this one model is holding up your entire block. And immersion wise, obviously, you're like, why am I like Dread Elf Executioners being held up by this one, I don't know, Dwarf Seeker? This is stupid. Obviously. We back? I got interrupted by my computer saying they didn't have any space to record anymore. So I had to change the path that it's saving in. I was talking about one stubborn model. Yeah. So I might slightly be repeating myself. I might fix this in editing. I might not. Don't know. So people are like, oh, it's stupid. Like, my big block would obviously just chop this guy down, run through him or whatever. I shouldn't be held up by this guy. Personally, my in-game immersion is like, oh, yes, this one guy. My one guy is left and he's holding you up. And I know that if I'm simulating a real battle, it's like, oh, one guy's obviously not going to do that. That doesn't make sense. But in terms of ninth age rules, in terms of ninth age games, I'm like, great. Like, this is really fun. This is really cool. This is really interesting. This one guy has held on, and he's held up your entire block, and he's changed the entire game. And I think there's not enough credit given to in-game immersion. People talk about narrative immersion way more than in-game immersion. I think in-game immersion needs a bit more respect. So enough of this negativity, though. We're going to move on to what are things that I think are good. And one of those things is season packs. I think the season packs are an excellent idea, and frankly, all they needed to do in 3rd edition. If they'd just been releasing season packs with new objectives, new list building features, maybe like new maps and deployments and stuff, I think it would have been exactly what 2.0 needed. So the fact they're doing them for 3.0 is, in my opinion, an amazing sign. I don't actually have a lot of detail to talk about with that. I just think that it's one of the best ideas they've had, and I think it would be a way better way to promote certain styles of play if they wanted it, because they could basically change the victory conditions for a season, basically just as a test to go like, well, actually no one's been taking Scourges for a while, so let's do some rules that make big, sick models do well. And then you just have to deal with it for a season. If people are like, you know what, I'm sick of this being dominated by signal models now, you go like, great, well, we're going to do more controlling points of the map. Only scoring units can do it. It's the only way you win the game. And you would just change things up so well. And I think they can do that with the season pack. So if they get a nice, solid set of core rules for 3.0 down, I think they can tinker so much just through the season packs with the gaming experience that, so long as I like 3.0, or so long as the community in general likes 3.0 more than 2.0, it's a definite improvement. Like, as soon as they've got season packs, if you like the core game more, it's going to be sick. I also think a really good idea is the amount of micro trick things they've removed. Those sort of gotcha moments and things. And they're really trying to cut away from those to make the game more approachable and less, oh, you haven't played that much. I've played a lot. Well, actually, I've done this charge so that my champion is the only thing contacting your character, so your character can't strike and now you lose the game. That might still exist, for instance, but taking away a lot of those micro issues, I think is a really, really good idea for engaging players, particularly players who aren't your super focused ETC guys. And ETC guys, actually, in general, often aren't super good on the micro rules anyway. It's one of the things I was really good at, but I was just less good at the game in general. But removing them, I think, allows the game to focus a bit more on giving you ways to win that correspond with the gaming experience that they want. So rather than losing because someone used some weird little tricks that you didn't know, you would win a game based on the fact that you have played overall better. One of the things that I heard a lot, and I don't know if 3.0 really has solved it, but this is the sort of thing that does help with solving it, was players would say like, oh, it was going, and I'd watch games on UB too and agree with their assessment, like, it was going pretty well, it was pretty even, and then I didn't see that was a flank charge, and then it was a 20-0 because of that. I don't think 3.0 has really solved that problem, but I think it is trying to with things like removing little micro tricks. And I think it's a good idea, because if you go to it, particularly if you're a less dedicated player and you go through a whole game and you think you did really well, you made one mistake and you lost the whole thing, it's like, well, your one mistake probably shouldn't make it a 20-0. Your one mistake should make it like a 14-6 against you. Like, it was a 10-10. Having a minor error shouldn't cascade everything and make it all a disaster. So I think that sort of thing, that approach, is really good. I also think, in general, although as I said before, I don't really like the squishing of everything together, the fact that they've decided MMU blocks is what our game is going to be about, and we're designing a game that facilitates that playstyle, I think is good. I think that Warhammer in general was sort of pretty much sort of, maybe not at the very start, I'm no Warhammer historian, but I would not be surprised if the game sort of started out as basically, models are cool, let's find a way to use them on the table. Let's design some rules that work. They designed some rules that work, great. And then they sort of just iterated on it in each sort of edition. And one of the things they probably didn't do, which is a more modern game design thing, is go, what is our core gaming experience that we want to achieve? Let's build from that rather than just tinker and change little things to try and improve what we already have. So I think 3.0 has done a bit to sort of strip back its own, or the own expectations of the game and go, what do we want players to experience when they're playing this, and let's make sure that we're delivering on that. We're not just Warhammer Fantasy like balanced and with clear rules, we're delivering the gaming experience that we want to deliver. So I think that their focus on MMU in general is, I mean, it is in conflict with what I was saying earlier, because you're taking away options, but I think if it's done well, your end game result might actually be better, even if a lot of the players currently playing the game maybe won't like it as much. Because if I like single models, or if I like MSU, obviously I'm going to like a game that's just MMU worse, but the game itself might be better for what it is, if it's done well. Personally, I actually also... so some of my personal opinions are in direct opposition to the things that I said were good. Personally, I don't like the focus on MMU. I like the spread of options, as I said. I also really like the fiddly parts of the game. All those, like, oh, I'm going to, like, you know, I've moved up. So, actually, a good example of sort of the fiddly parts of the game is with my Chariot Star against the typical Empire Knight bus list. They all had the same character setup, basically, where it was like Knight Commander with Light of the Sunstone, Prelate with maybe the battle-focused apparent unit thing, and an Inquisitor that does the D3 wounds and has 5 attacks against channel. And doing the maths of like how it all works and everything and what buffs we're likely to have, it was basically a case of like, okay, well, I need to have my... I couldn't have the Sonar-style guy touch my Shamanism, reroll the wound Shaman, or Soothsayer, because he gets around all that, because he doesn't have to roll the wound, he wounds automatically. And this was only for like a particular, like 6 months or something, where these combos, before I changed my list and before EOS developed a little bit, I think. But I knew that when I was moving up, I was like, okay, his Inquisitor's on that side, I need to have my Soothsayer on this side. So I needed to switch my characters. And it was sort of the thing where I was like, if we both know how this goes, we're both going to be switching our characters all the time to make sure that no matter who charges, we have the right ones in contact. But my opponents would never have thought about the matchup as much as I had, because all of their Empire lists were the same, and my Beast Turd list was different to every other Beast Turd list. So, and I enjoyed that little fiddly, like, okay, I've thought about this matchup on this matchup, and I need to do these very specific sort of maneuverings. I also really liked the champion denying attacks to characters if you can maneuver it correctly. If you can go, you know what, I've charged you, you had your character on the edge, that was dumb. Now I've got my champion touching him, you can't do anything. I liked those fiddly micro bits. And I know I said that removing them is good for the game, I just think that removing them is poorer from my experience. I don't think it's a deal breaker though. I think you can take all that out, particularly because I'm not super competitive anymore. I sort of tried to go hard and I'm not that interested in that anymore. So particularly because I don't care so much about winning, I think you can take a lot of that out and it's like, I do miss it. I did like it. But as long as the game is still fun, I don't think it really is a loss. So I do think removing it's a good idea, even if for my personal gaming experience, it's not my favorite thing. I also don't like the cap on the big guy. I like big uber models. I don't always want to run them, but I want the opportunity to run them. I enjoyed my vampire count on Shrieking Horror with all the gear I could give him and all the upgrades. I like a big souped up greater demon. I like all those things. I don't like them being taken away and sort of the peak level of models in the game being brought down a step. It's just personally something that I will miss in 3.0. Even if, from what I've seen, I actually don't think it's a huge drop in sort of efficiency. Is sort of the wrong word, but like the peak level, I don't actually think is that big of a drop. It might be for things like Colossal Zombie Dragon, Scourge, maybe, but you can just sort of not make him a wizard. Like some of those ones that would really be sort of like 1100 points when you give them all the gear. It's probably a pretty noticeable drop for them. I think I can get over this one as well. Taking fewer upgrades, maybe. I don't really like magic, so taking less magic. I might like 3.0 magic, actually. I haven't even looked at it. It was too big a change. Wasn't interested in figuring that out at this stage. But typically, I don't care about the magic phase at all. It's like, well, if that unlocks something in my list, I'll use it, but I don't care. I'm not interested in... It doesn't enhance my game experience, so I'm happy taking away magic if it means that I can take all of the upgrades, combat upgrades on my big guys. So I don't even know if I'll miss it that much, but I do like the presence of these. Like, this is the one top dog. He's worth more than any of your units. Which I guess still exists because the unit caps are all 600. But I don't like the fact that that's gone. I also... This goes back to sort of my homogenization of army lists and army books. I don't like that because I like having lots of options, and one of the reasons I like having lots of options is because that allows me to be a bit of a special snowflake. I can see that everybody's building a certain type of list, so I'm going to build a different type of list. Not even for efficiency or like power or anything, but purely because I'm like, I don't want to run what you're running. I want to run my own thing. When I run my dwarves, I'm like, it's all... Like, in 2.0, I'm running MSU, MMU, all combat, no magic dwarves. Those lists exist, but they're pretty strictly MSU, and they're usually a bit more points denial-y than getting into combat. So I feel like my dwarf list was very unique, and I really enjoyed that. My Beastos list... There was some times when people were running chariot characters together on UB that I saw, but wasn't much. Like, I was the guy doing the chariot star. The chariot star since 2014, I was the guy. Actually, no. I think 2015, I first did chariot characters together. But anyway, I was the chariot star guy. When I did 7 Sins, mostly foot slogging warriors, and the only build that they've actually killed is the Chariot Star. I can do all the other builds, but I just feel like I have fewer options to be unique, and I like to be a special snowflake who everyone goes, that's interesting, Max. So again, it's my personal preference that I don't like how they're trying to squish things together, even though, as I said, it might make a better game overall. But that's my 3.0 thoughts. There is nothing officially planned in Sydney in terms of events or anything like that. There has been some discussion of like game days and getting together, and I'll play at some point, but I really don't know when I'm going to get my teeth stuck in properly, because I've got a lot of games going on at the moment. Like, I'm playing a bit of 40k, begrudgingly. Haven't played War Machine in a while, but I was enjoying that. I've picked up some Star Wars Legion. And I've got sort of just other hobby things going on in life, so I'm not focusing as much on Ninth Age. But I'm hoping that eventually, like, people start to learn the 3.0 rules and someone can just teach me. Because I don't want to teach myself. I don't want to figure it all out. I want someone to go, this is how this works. And I go, cool. And then once I've learnt it, I can start cross-referencing things in the rulebook, being like, is that exactly how it works? What about this weird situation? Which is pretty much how I learnt Warhammer. And became really good on the rules in Warhammer. And same for 9th Age, where it's like, okay, so someone else has told me how something works. We played it that way. And then a weird situation that doesn't seem covered has come up. I've looked it up in the rulebook, and then my brain started going. So I'm sure there will be further stuff in future, but it probably will still be a bit of a hiatus on the channel in general, because I don't imagine I'll have much gaming stuff to chat about. But if you've got specific things that you are like, hey, like, I want to know what you think about XYZ, I might make a video if you ask for it. So feel free to ask for anything. I make no promises. As I said in my blog on the forums recently, I'm very fickle. I had a poll up for what army I should take, and everyone voted for demons, and I went, nah, I'm going to take dwarves over dwarves. So I make no promises, but if you are interested in particular things, feel free to ask. I might make a video, and then you can have it on in the background as you paint, because I know no one pays that much attention to what I'm saying. I'm just background noise. That's okay. I'm fine with my lot in life. I do that too. But yeah, otherwise, because I don't have anything particularly, other than doing a painting video, which I do want to do at some point, again, having to try and figure out the logistics on it, which probably isn't that hard, but I haven't bothered to think about it much. That's the only one that I sort of have ticking as that's something I want to do on my channel. I've been sitting on a 3.0 video for, like, the idea of doing one for a while, and haven't been bothered. But I don't have that many sort of things that are pressing and I want to get out. So it might be a while before you hear from All Young Suet again. But I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your morning, evening, day, whatever is going on.